Departamento de Ciências da Comunicação, FCSH-UNL.
I'm Andre Lange. I'm working as a European Audiovisual Observatory, and I will explain rapidly what the observatory is. But first, on the title of my presentation, economic situation of the public broadcasting sector in the European Union. I'm using the word sector, not to use services. Because, as you will see, I'm basically working with company data and not including information on companies owned by the state or by the publicly owned, which does not mean necessarily that everything they do is part of public services. On the contrary, in some countries, some private channels or some private companies may have some activities and considered as public services. So the European Audiovisual Observatory is a public body, a pan-European public body. We are working in the legal framework of the Council of Europe, so the enlarged Europe, including countries like Russia and Turkey. We have 38 member states, and the European Union, represented by the European Commission, is also a member of our organization. And our mission is to increase transparency on the audiovisual sector, meaning that we are just collecting, processing, and distributing information, and we are not in charge of elaborating policy, making a recommendation. On the contrary, we have to avoid to take position in the public debate, and we are not in favor of the public services or against the public services. We have an advisory committee where EBU is represented, but also the ACT, the Association of Commercial Television, and various federations of the film industry, the CP for the independent TV producer. We try to be as neutral as possible. And we are collecting information on the economic dimension of the sector, but also with a legal department collecting legal information. Very rapidly, we have various publications, the main one being Statistical Yearbook in 3 volumes with basic figures on the film, television, video, and audiovisual services activities. We have various legal publications, and we have 4 databases accessible free on the website, one on film emission, one on the public funding of the film and audiovisual program, one which is more related to the topic of today, and I will use the MAVIS, the database that we have developed for the DG communication of the European Commission, making a systematic census of all existing TV channels in the European Union, whatever national, regional, local, pan-European, international channels. And we have also one database, Iris Merlin, which is a database on legal information. Thanks to this MAVIS database, we can identify the number of TV channels in the European Union. And we are speaking of either channels established in one of the countries, the European Union, other channels coming from outside, but which are that you can watch through satellite, cable, IPTV, digital terrestrial television in at least one of the countries. And from in 2000 there was almost 2,500 channels in Europe, and end of 2010 there was almost 8,000 channels, meaning that the development of television has been dramatic, in particular for local television. And end of 2011, 47% of the channels had a national national coverage, 12% were international or pan-European channels, and almost 40% of the channels were local or regional. I will not go into the details, but you see the very rich panorama of thematic channels. You have all the categories represented. But what is more of interest for today is the place of public channels, public-owned channels, and using three basic categories related to the coverage and the kind of license. If we consider the channels with a terrestrial license, whatever for the old analog license or no license for digital terrestrial diffusion, we have 162 public channels and 381 private. So basically 1/3 public and 2/3 private. But if we look the other nationwide channels, meaning the channels that can be received through cable, satellite, IPTV, we have only 91 publicly owned and 2,200 which are private. Although for the regional channels, we have 97 regional public channels and 467 private. So the public channels are, of course, in the minority. And if we look country by country, we can see that Spain, actually Enrique will say some words on the situation of the public regional autonomic channels in Spain, which are very numerous. I wouldn't say plethoric, but we have more than 40 regional channels in Spain. While in UK, you see now that there are more than 25 public terrestrial channels. And for UK, I would underline that we consider as public not only BBC, but also Channel 4, which very often people think that Channel 4 is a private channel because the financing is purely commercial. No, Channel 4 is still a public corporation with public service mandate, so it should be integrated in the description of the public landscape. If we see the evolution of the revenues of the old radio TV system in the European Union, we can see that the total revenue grew from 80 billion in 2006 to more than 90 billion in 2010, and the public financing, meaning either license fee, what we call contribution, or direct funding, direct grants by the state, grew from 22.7 billion in 2006 to 24.7. If we compare the yearly average rate of growth of the various kind of revenues, we can see the total, the average rate of growth during the period 2006-2010 was 2.4%. The most rapid growth was for the consumer spent in pay TV, whatever subscribing to cable, to IPTV, to pay TV on digital terrestrial television, on satellite. During the period, there was a decline of the revenues of advertising, 1.5 for radio and 1.3 for TV, and the growth of public revenues was a bit less than the total revenues, 2.2. Meaning that at the end, for the period 2006-2010, the public financing at the European level remained stable, around 27-28% of the total, when basically the most important change was in the growing part of pay TV, going from 29.3% in 2006 to 35.4% in 2010. Now, if we compare this various kind of revenues in relation with the number of inhabitants, so the revenue of the radio TV system per capita, we can say that we can see that the UK is by far the country where the level of expenses by the inhabitants is most important, almost 290 euro. When Spain, for the big countries, is less than 150. But see on the right for the small country, I'm just talking a sample of small country, Belgium, Portugal, Austria, and Greece. You can see that well, Belgium is spending almost as much per inhabitant than UK. This is due to the fact that in Belgium we have 3 communities with their own audiovisual radio TV system. Of course, the necessity of complementary financing is necessary. But Portugal is also quite high, even higher than the revenues in Germany, and higher than Austria, for example. Now, the revenues of the public sector in the European Union in 2010 was 32.9 billion, with a majority of public revenues, but also with rather a significant part of commercial revenues. And if we compare now the situation between the 5 big countries, we see that Germany is the leading country in terms of revenues of the public sector, almost 9 billion of euro. UK more than 7 billion, and Spain is the last one with 2 billion. If we look for the small country, then you see that Portugal is the country with lower revenue for the public sector, even a lower level than Greece. And if we compare the share of between public and public revenues and commercial revenues, for the European Union, the public revenues represent 75% of the sector, and commercial revenue 23%. And you can see that for this aspect, Portugal is in the European average, and you can see also the different situation for the big country where Germany, the financing is more than 90%, when Italy and UK, the part of commercial revenues is between 30 and 40%. Now, if we compare the profitability of the various families of broadcasting companies, we have a very large definition. We consider that there is the big companies mainly financed by advertising, like, well, in Portugal it would be SIC and TVI, France, TF1 and M6. This category is the most profitable family, with they suffered of the advertising crisis in 2008, 2009, but are progressively recovering the level of profitability. Thematic channels is a company specialized in providing thematic channels. We also include in this category the French Canal+. They've also suffered of the crisis in 2008, but you see that 2009, 2010, they are recovering high level of profitability. Home shopping channels have also suffered of the crisis. And the public services, you can see that during all the period, at the level of the European Union, the public service was in deficit. But this is mainly due to the specific way of financing of the regional Spanish television, which are, I'm speaking under the control of Professor Bustamante, but they are mainly financed through financing through in the capital, so the public financing does not appear in the profit and loss account, meaning that they are regularly in deficit. If you exclude this Spanish regional television, then the profit margin of the public sector would be a bit superior to 0 between 1 and 2%. Now, if we look at the growth of revenues between 2010 and 2009 of the main public broadcaster, you see that Channel 4, which is mainly financed through advertising, but also has quite important pay TV activities, with a rate of growth of more than 10%. And in the contrary, in countries like Hungary, Latvia, Italy, the public services, the revenues have decreased in a rather important manner. For Portugal, the rate of growth was just from 2 to 3% in this year. Now, it's interesting to compare, of course, the economic situation with the TV audience market situation. Of course, the TV audience market is just one indicator. It should not be considered as the only indicator of success of public service companies, but it's still an important indicator. And you see that the European situation is very, maybe different country by country. In Denmark, where there are two public broadcasters, Denmark Radio and TV2, the cumulative market share of all public channels is still superior to 60%, while in Romania, which is a country where the market share of the public channel is the weakest, is 8%. Portugal is around 30%, but you can see that it's relatively stable when in most of the country the market share of the public channels was increasing. I think it was said this morning by Pedro Broma, there is a relatively stable situation of the audience and the success of the public channels. Now in this graph, it looks like some launch of balloons, but it's trying to represent on one the importance of the circles is the importance of the amount of financing, and then you have disposition between share of public funding, with on the right the country where the public funding of public broadcaster is the most important, and at the vertical you have the audience market share. And basically you can see that you have three categories of situation. The situation where you have public broadcaster with a rather high level of public funding, Portugal being the limit was something like 75% of public financing, and countries like Finland or Sweden where it's almost only public financing, and with a rather significant market share between 25 and 50% of market share. The second category are the small country where the public funding is important, but the market share is lower than 20%. Then you have a third category, which are the country with a mixed funding between public and private. It's UK, BBC, almost completely public funded, and Channel 4, completely commercial funded, and with a rather substantial level of audience between 35 and 60%. And you have two strange situations. Denmark, where there are two broadcasters with a mix, although one completely public financed, the other one completely commercial funded. And then you have Poland, where the level of public funding is now very low, around 20%. So this is for the general panorama in terms of TV services. Now, the debate is more and more on the role of public broadcaster in the audiovisual on-demand services, meaning not only internet but also possible services in other way of distribution like IPTV or arriving connected TV. Of course, now almost all the public broadcasters have their own catch-up TV services, accessible free directly online. In some cases, also accessible on IPTV or cable, like in Belgium, for example, the RTBF and the VRT, the Flemish broadcaster, were on the early start to have agreement with Belgacom, one of the pioneer in terms of on-demand services. In France, the catch-up TV services of France Télévisions are accessible through the Freebox Replay, which is the services of the leading IPTV operator. In UK, BBC, Channel 4, but also ITV, O5 have an agreement and have catch-up TV services accessible on the British Telecom platform and are preparing their own IPTV platform under the name of YouView. You have some cases of archive on demand. I think that RTP is one of the services. No, you have some kind of TV museum. The best example of archive on TV is the INA in France, where thousands of programs are now freely accessible online, but they have also now one paying on-demand services through the IPTV platform. And you have also one interesting, not very well known, but case of one on-demand services which is pan-European, EU screen, which is various archives of public broadcasters providing together some archives with historical programs. Very few public broadcasters are providing paying VOD services. This is the case for Channel 4 in UK. France Télévisions in France has other services, Arte, but in some countries, like for example in Germany, it's clearly prohibited for the public broadcaster to be present on this market. The private broadcasters make quite a lot of lobbying to avoid the competition of public broadcaster on the paying VOD market. Now, there are also other forms of presence of the public broadcaster on-demand services. For example, some of the public broadcasters are providing programs in a pay formula on the iTunes Store, or also on the iTunes Store, some are providing podcasts more for radio programs, like for example the RAI is quite a lot of programs accessible. Also some public broadcasters are now providing applications for the iPhone or the iPad. This is for example what you can find on the iTunes market for as application provided by the BBC. There may be other programs from BBC News, other programs from the Top Gear, which is a very popular program in UK related to cars, and you can purchase on the iTunes Store. Same thing on the Android marketplace, called Google Play. One other formula which is used not by all broadcasters and not by all public broadcasters, but it's branded channels on the user-generated content platform, like with YouTube, but also in France and in some other countries, Dailymotion. And you see that, for example, ZDF have, I think they have something like 7 or 8 different branded channels on YouTube. And there is a study already 4 or 5 years ago, Giacomo made some more recent information that RAI, which has its own website, RAI.net, and on put the same program on YouTube, and studies was demonstrating that for young people do not go on the RAI website, but look the same programs on the RAI branded channel on YouTube. And we have identified more than 600 branded channels provided by TV broadcaster in Europe, public or private, with UK being by far the leading country, more than 114 branded channels on YouTube, with the BBC alone has something like 60 different branded channels on YouTube. And you can see that on the top 10 branded channels on YouTube, ranked by number of subscribers, 7 of the top 10 are provided by public broadcaster, BBC Top Gear, BBC Worldwide, BBC General branded channels, and then BBC Earth, 4 on-demand comedy, which is providing comedy program from one of the Channel 4 catalog, BBC America, and Channel 4. And it's also interesting to see the level of the average view of one video. You see the BBC Top Gear, one video will be seen by average by 600, almost 700,000 viewers. So it's becoming something quite significant, and the presence of this kind of platform will probably be one of the important developments in the coming years. Although Facebook is now used by public broadcasters, for example, the BBC is using Facebook, and it's also interesting to see what BBC put on YouTube and what they put on Facebook. I'm sure that one analysis in detail should be done on this, but if you see BBC EastEnders, so the leading historical soap opera proposed by BBC, they have 2.7 million followers on Facebook. Now, the problem, we can collect data on the offer. It's much more difficult to obtain the data on more details in the catalog, the number of video, and also more difficult to obtain data on audience. This is one of the classical arguments that currently the level of information on the consumption on-demand services is not satisfactory, that the provider of services should make an effort to make the market a bit more transparent. But we have for France, there is quite a lot of information thanks to what is done by the CNC, the French National Film Agency, also there's also interest on the TV program production, and they created 2 years ago what they call the baromètre de la télévision de rattrapage, so the monitoring the catch-up TV offer and demand in France. And you can see that the volume of VOD programs provided by the broadcaster in France went from more than 9,000 hours in March 2011 to more than 12,000 hours in February this year. And the number of programs went from something like 18,000 different titles to 44,000 in February. So you see in 1 year the incredible development of this kind of offer. And the CNC provides quite detailed information of the offer by kind of broadcaster, by kind of programs. And you can see that the offer by public broadcaster, donc France Télévisions, France 1, France 2, France 3, sorry, France 2, France 3, France 5, and France 4 represents something like 30% of the offer. But in terms of genre, the public broadcaster that you see mainly active in the field of documentaries with Arte, France 5, France 3, France 2, and la chaîne parlementaire, which also public as a leading provider of documentaries. But in the other categories, TV drama, TV fiction, it's mainly the private, and in terms of animation, France 3 is only in fifth position. The CNC also provides data on the number of viewed video, and you can see also that in 1 year the development has been quite significant, going from 149 millions of video viewed in March 2011 to 223 million views in February this year. Fiction and entertainment are the most popular kind of programs, and documentary is very marginal, meaning that of course the public broadcaster will be there is no consolidated data on the market share of the public broadcaster in this field, but you can imagine that they are in reality in minority position. Now the study show also what kind of programs are the most popular by groups, and you can see that for the group France Télévisions, the leading program is Plus belle la vie, which is a very popular soap opera. On demande qu'à en rire, which is one entertainment program. Then the news, Le jour où tout a basculé, which is a bit some kind of chronicle programs, and On n'est pas couché, which is very popular talk show. So this is the leading programs on demand for the public broadcaster. It's not at all, of course, the documentaries. So, sorry I was a bit long and too rapid probably on the same time, but if you wish to get more information, please visit our website, our databases, and our publication. Thank you.